All right, good morning, everybody. Aloha. All right, I'm excited for today's panel. We brought together a pretty prestigious group of professionals and experts. They're going to talk to you for the next, I believe, hour and a quarter about zero trust, about what's going on in the DoD and in all the services. I will point to the screen on the left where you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. Ask some tough questions. That's what I told them when we were setting up the panel, is that there's going to be a lot of people in the audience who really want to know what's going on, and there's a lot of complicated things about zero trust, including in this operation environment. So please take time, write some great questions, and we should have plenty of time to get at your needs as well. So let's get going. I have the distinct pleasure to introduce the panel, but in particular, I'm going to introduce our moderator, and then he'll take care of introducing the rest. And it's very short, Randy. Oh, no. So we asked DoD CIO if they would like to help us, and the answer was yes. And then they aligned us with Mr. Resnick, who is the director for the Zero Trust portfolio for DoD CIO, establishing roadmaps and guidance that then affect the services and then alignment of those capabilities within the services to that end. So Randy is the one who's driving the show today, and we're really looking forward to what you have to say, Randy. And I'll turn it over to you for your panel. Thank you.
Okay, great. Good morning, everybody. I'm very, very pleased to be here. Before I begin, let's have some fun. We have an hour here. I plan on spending at least 20 minutes at the end for Q&A. So we have, I set up a number of questions to ask this distinguished panel. But regardless of where I'm at on my list, 20 minutes is going to be spent minimum on Q&A from the audience. So I'll let everybody introduce themselves. I'm going to be calling them by their first name when I ask questions, but fully just explain who you are, what role you have, what service you work in, and what do you do.
My name is David Volker. I am the Department of Navy Zero Trust Architecture Lead, and I support both Navy and Marine Corps in their implementation for Zero Trust. I also supported the PFMO getting started about 2 years ago. That's now, right. In October timeframe, getting everything set up, and we're very lucky to have Mr. Resnick come on board as a lead coming from the NSA and taking lead of the Zero Trust Portfolio Management Office.
Thank you, Dave.
Aloha. My name is Jamie Milne. I'm with the National Security Agency. I'm the ICAM lead for our service provider relationship with the IC. And I also co-lead our ICAM for Zero Trust efforts in collaboration with the ZT PFMO. So everything I say will be from an ICAM perspective. I'm not claiming that ICAM is all of Zero Trust. I'll just say that caveat once, but I believe it's a key component of that. And I'll also be talking a little bit about managing the productization of our ICAM solutions for use of the DoD, and the pieces that come around that, particularly standards and tagging your data. That'll be the first time I mentioned tagging your data today, but not the last.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Justin Stoltman. I'm the director for the Department of the Air Force Zero Trust Functional Management Office, a office that it was mirrored very much after the DoD PFMO. We are going to be the ones responsible for orchestrating all zero trust activities across both Air Force and Space Force. Background, I come from industry. I spent a good amount of time with a small company called IBM, and then moved into the contracting world, and then moved into the civilian world. And so proudly serving now in a dual hat role, where I'm also serving with 16th Air Force in the Attack Surface Management Center of Excellence. So strategically positioned to bring operational requirements up to DAF level strategy policy guidance and vice versa.
Good morning. I'm Chris Pim. I'm from DISA. I'm the Zero Trust Portfolio Manager, also the Thunderdome Portfolio Manager, and we've been working through ICAM and other parts of DISA to introduce Zero Trust for DISA, the DoD net, and the greater DoD. As we continue to deploy through, we're walking through deployment. We just went over 4,000 users on Thunderdome, 10 sites as we crawl through the entire Department of Defense and DISA's terrain to be able to do that at speed and at pace. But appreciate being on the panel. Look forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Chris. So you can see that we have a pretty extensive panel that's well represented across the DoD. So the idea here is that we're going to ask a lot of questions. I'll ask a lot of questions to get a very good idea of where DoD is heading with Zero Trust. I want to just start by not describing what the Zero Trust Portfolio Office does, but just to let everybody know that for the last 2 weeks we have been reviewing implementation plans from the DoD components. We originally thought that we were going to have 47 of them coming to us. It turns out that there's going to be 40 because there are some services and components that are including others, like DISA with some of the DAFs, Air Force with Space Force, etc. So we're going to be receiving or have received 40. We are now in the middle of reviewing them as a first pass. We got through half of them already. If it's not going to happen today, it'll most likely happen tomorrow, where we give our first injection of feedback, and we're going to be expecting a 1-week turnaround with the answers. So I say this because there may be some questions coming to the panel over here where I might ask some detail on that. So with that said, let's start it off. I'll start it off with an easy question, and that question is, what has been your biggest challenge so far in the ZT sphere where you work? And I'll start from the end coming towards me. So, Chris, you have it.
Thanks, sir. So I would say the biggest challenge is scale and scope and terrain, right? So what we've seen so far is, we're going to integrate a bunch of different capabilities together, including ICAM and other things, and then to do that at scale with drivers, with some pretty aggressive drivers as far as timelines, as it applies to both Zero Trust timelines, also JRSS deprecation timelines, which some of you are tracking. So the scale and scope of what we're taking on for the user population, whether that's DISA, DoDNet, the COCOMs, the services, field activities and agencies. So when we introduce agencies' DAFs over to DoDNet, which is an ongoing process right now, Thunderdome is part of that package. So in every case where there's a deployment to a site, be it DLA with 300 sites, right, in each case we have to do a physical deployment for Thunderdome to get towards Zero Trust. And I don't want to give the audience the impression that Thunderdome is the only answer for DISA, for Zero Trust. It's one component in addition to ICAM and other things, but scale and scope is what I would say is the challenge.
All right, I'll follow that up with, I think for Department of the Air Force, what we've seen over the past several years is the culture change. And what we mean by that, right? Zero Trust in applying this framework dramatically changes how we conduct defensive cyber and offensive cyber across the force. Legacy things, right? We look at things that we've gotten very comfortable with, right? Defense in depth has been proven ineffective, right? We know the adversaries in our network. The username password has been proven to be the most ineffective method of authentication. The next generation firewall is no longer next generation, right? So all of these things that we've become comfortable with from a defensive cyber perspective don't really work. And then piling on, we have in the military, and I'll actually quote our chief technology officer here, but Jay Bonsi, our CTO, has said, I want to keep stressing that we can't lose strategic focus or get fatigued on these topics. We know from industry that will take 5 to 10 years to make meaningful progress. In the military, this is at least 2 full leadership changeovers where the second leader won't have the excitement of a new start, but will have to carry the direction through on faith. Often the disillusionment cycle spins faster than the delivery cycle, and so we will have to combat those natural human tendencies.
Very good. For NSA, really, our Zero Trust journey started a long time ago. So sort of post 9/11, we pivoted as an agency to figure out how we could better and differently process intelligence and deliver that as a combat support agency. A lot of those parts were around data tagging, management of data, and enforcement of ICAM. Not coincidentally, I would say, have been adopted and are part of a Zero Trust framework. So it's been a real challenge for us to adopt that sort of data tagging culture, operate it at scale and broad scope, I think there's still the DoD's challenge with bigger scale and bigger scope. But we've been able to achieve that sort of target level data-centric approach to zero trust for some time now. I think one of our biggest challenges that we see going forward is, especially as a combat support agency, being able to extend those experiences, share those tools, and enable our partners within the U.S. and Department of Defense, but with our coalition partners as well on the IC and the DoD side, and to industry to ensure that those standards get adopted and ensure that we take a real data-centric approach to security and move forward with zero trust. To that end, as an IC, we're developing encoding specifications to allow folks across multiple organizational boundaries to tag their data, to execute digital policy in a machine-readable, scalable way, and to assign attributes to their identities, whether that's a person entity or a non-person entity, extending not just beyond servers, but applications, including application of AI and bots. And that's where I see, our next biggest challenge is, I agree totally, it's a cultural one, it's a scale and scope one as well, to adopt those standards across the DoD. We've made a lot of meaningful progress in that area, and we'll only continue to make progress with those partnerships amongst the different services, our coalition partners, and industry.
The biggest challenge that I think I faced with zero trust was, in the beginning of 2019, going into the latter part of 2019, pre-pandemic, I was at the IPv6 symposium, and we were talking about IPv6 implementation and how much that was going to dramatically change how we did networks within DoD. And at the time I was speaking, I brought up zero trust and said, at the same time that we're looking at changing our networking protocol from IPv4 to IPv6, we should start thinking about transitioning the way that we do cybersecurity. And at that time, the NIST 800-207 was still in draft. It wasn't actually finalized until mid-pandemic timeframe in 2020. So there had been a lot of changes and a lot of connections between NIST 800-162 and 800-207 to show how ABAC really supported our ICAM environment in a zero trust environment by adding two new logical components, which is the policy engine and the policy administrator. So for those folks who are familiar with those two particular standards, the final version of the 800-207 showed the policy decision point wrapping around those two new logical components. So the standardization piece, I think, came a long way. It wasn't as much of a challenge, but I do want to mention that. But the cultural adoption from the end of 2019, when we had calls for action, even before then, to move towards zero trust, and which I termed as an interior cyber defensive operations effort, and put out guidebooks within the Department of Navy to basically describe that in line with the 800-207. But as we move forward with DoD's community of interest and then finally establishing the Zero Trust Portfolio Management Office, a lot of those challenges for cultural adoption have gone away and really started looking at scheduling and moving forward and how do we get a technically enabled zero trust, target level zero trust baseline implemented in each portion of the Navy, not just in business and enterprise IT, but all the way out to the tactical edge and where the scheduling and where we have capabilities that can't be taken offline. How do we get the availability to be able to upgrade those particular systems to implement target level zero trust to make sure that we have a very refined and firm foundation for a security posture that is zero trust enabled?
This is excellent. I can't disagree with any answer over here. We heard about scale, scope, the how, culture. I would have to second and third the culture thing. I underestimated what that challenge was. It is gigantic, and I still the portfolio office faces it every single day. So whether you're from industry or from FedCiv or DoD, Intel community, doesn't matter. If you can't successfully get past a culture change, zero trust is extremely difficult to implement. Jamie, Justin, I have one for you. So when we talk about zero trust in the AOR that we're in right now in the Pacific, how would you say or describe, based on what you do and your experiences, how zero trust could create what I would call a vibrant mission partner environment? We hear a lot about mission partner environments and all the experiments, but I want to get more strategic. What is it about zero trust that creates that environment that is significantly different or better, in a sense, from cybersecurity that doesn't exist today?
Oh, absolutely. I'll take the first crack at it. And so I think we've heard about this from a few of the other panels focused on zero trust as well, right? We've heard, and I'll bring it up again, the CIA triad. When we talk about implementing cybersecurity efforts, we should always roll back to that triad and understand what we're doing. Traditionally, with anything we've done in the past, we improve confidentiality, we improve integrity, but usually at the sacrifice of availability, right? We are limiting that availability to a scope that sometimes causes us to denial of service ourselves when that radio doesn't work or when that communications line is down. And so really, as a byproduct of what we're doing with Zero Trust, we're drastically simplifying our networks. The network really won't be a network anymore. It's just going to be a medium that passes bits and bytes to its destination. The security perimeters are moving to a software-defined edge that's around each resource that we have, whether that's data or an application, whatever it may be. So it's moving as far south as possible off of the domain. And so we're no longer tied to specific domains, VPNs, things of that nature. We are able to leverage whatever network path is available to us to go directly to that application while also still improving the confidentiality and the integrity of the data that's behind it. And so really paving the way for that anytime, anywhere access that I think is very vital out here in the Pacific. When our warfighters need communications need to work. That's the most basic requirement we have. And so if we can provide infinite resiliency, leveraging commercial paths, our own previously existing paths, DISA, et cetera, we can guarantee communications at our discretion.
I think for us, we've been very lucky to work across the services, and including a number of DARPA projects with Indo-PACOM. When we think about Indo-PACOM, or when I'm challenged with what's unique about Indo-PACOM, a couple of things come to mind. So we think around like DDIL, distributed, and latency of networks. Think around the coalition and the strength that's required with our partnerships in order to achieve success in this region. I think around the strategic nature of the adversary and the scale of the adversary that we're targeting. From a DDIL perspective, some of the products that we've made available as part of our work with ZTPFMO include things around being able to cache and understand, when, from a policy perspective and a technological perspective, can we start to cache and think around managing access in those, forward environments. We also have a decentralized policy decision point that we can deploy on the edge. So you're starting to make decisions consistent with policy from a centralized perspective, but you can make that out the edge, apply those to folks who are deploying applications or executing mission right at the very edge of where they need to. From a coalition standpoint, I'm going to continue to bang the drum for data standards and the requirement to tag your data, right? From a coalition standpoint, being able to share data between organizations and do that in a mission-focused way, right? Not from thinking around technology and system level or network level tagging. When I talked around the challenges that we faced in the decade or so that we've been doing this, I think those were some of the missteps that we then corrected, right? We can speed the way that DoD achieves that target level zero trust by sharing our knowledge and experiences and showing folks potentially how to be able to tag that data and how to be able to enable a data-centric ABAC mode for ICAM. And then on the adversary side, we've got a lot of work. There's a lot of challenges. Very exciting space to be in terms of tackling the adversaries. But some of the IC experience we have of the broad sets of mission, combining multiple ints and being able to deliver data and information at speed and at scale, and the depth of some of that as well in terms of the sheer volume of information and support that we're able to provide as a combat support agency. Some of the commonalities we see for Indo-PACOM are the same as commonalities that we see in other environments. It's really around the integration between systems and applications. I think there's a sweet spot between how do you develop applications that are going to execute mission, and how do you connect between those different either parts of the mission or parts of organizations. And being able to understand where that sweet spot is and develop those commonalities has been really important. Admiral Rutenberg mentioned yesterday around decision advantage. I think decision advantage is a key part of where Zero Trust helps us outpace the adversary in Indo-PACOM. Think around decision advantage. Decisions are based on data, so being able to share that data between different organizations is critically important. To be able to do that quickly without overburdening how the data is shared between those organizations, how it's combined across different security levels is key. But the key is decision advantage, right? Advantage means that you're doing it better or faster or bigger than your adversary. And part of that is being able to secure it in a meaningful way, right? So we were able to offer security at a data level, either at the, specifically at the cell level, but specifically by tagging data and ensuring your data is protected with the right policies and means that we've, worked hard on creating up to now.
Thanks, Jamie. Justin, Chris, question for you. 2 of the 3 ways you can implement Zero Trust, according to the strategy, is via the cloud. So we have commercial cloud and private cloud, on-prem or no pun intended, in the cloud. How does DISA look at that, and do you have any recommendations for people that want to do a course of action 2 or 3 in terms of recommendations on how to implement ZT for that?
Sure. So I would start by not trivializing the complexity of what we're facing here, right? So sure, there's an on-prem environment, and in a lot of cases, those applications can move to the cloud, private cloud, public cloud. In some cases, that's not reality, right? So you need to have an answer for every environment. In addition to that, you need to look at your network, right? You need to look at all 7 pillars when you begin to implement. You need to look at what's available in your ecosystem now, which we at DISA have done a lot of that. For example, things like multi-factor authentication, privileged access, things like that. We've also put a product forward with Thunderdome called the Application Security Stack. We're working with JWCC folks and hosting and compute to get best of breed. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to lock us into a single answer to what I see as a very complicated question, right? So from my perspective, people need to start thinking about things like API security, as an example, right? Operating containers and what's happening in your container, right? Operating on-prem, and talking through that, protecting the data at that place. So the first thing I want to point out, the takeaway from my perspective is this. We're not going to be able to tear down the 25,000 applications and put them in a single cloud. That's not going to happen. So it'd be great if it could, but DoD is too complex for that. So we need to learn to operate in each environment. In Amazon, you may be different than Azure, you may be different than Google or Oracle, right? So we're in a multi-cloud environment, and you may secure things, segment things, prevent lateral movement in different ways, right? So we continue to work with those providers, we continue to work with industry on the best answer, but it's not always going to be the same answer. It's going to be very terrain dependent. And those are some of the things we faced going to either the cloud or on-prem. And we've come up with some answers. Some answers were already there, and we're just integrating those things together for the best answer for the application. But the other gentleman mentioned culture, right? Zero trust is an everybody problem. So a lot of times during the week, I get a lot of questions about how, Mr. Resnick or Justin or myself are going to come in and fix zero trust for you. That's not reality. You stig your own applications. You secure your own applications in many cases. We can help, and we do help. But this is an everybody problem, which is culture, in my mind.
Chris, does your answer also, is it in agreement with a hybrid cloud environment? Because that's really the reality of what's going to be happening. Is that also everything you said is still true there?
Absolutely, in my mind. I think tailored approach, hybrid cloud environment is going to need to be considered. There's some best practices. There's some ideas that we could share. There's some tools we could use. But hybrid approach, any approach, is going to have to be tailored towards the application and the scenario you're looking at and the terrain you're looking at, in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, Dave. So Zero Trust right now with the strategy has been mostly focused, as of right now, on the IT piece. You have to tackle something first, and that's the majority of what our infrastructure really is. But one could say that we're leaving a lot off the table. For example, IT, IoT, ICS, SCADA, weapon systems. There's been a lot of discussion, maybe not so public, about how does Zero Trust internally, in our portfolio office and with you guys, how does Zero Trust, how is it applicable there? What are some of the greatest thoughts there? So I really would like to have your opinion on your latest thinking, on how you personally think about Zero Trust in weapon systems, IoT, SCADA, anything but IT.
So from my standpoint, when I look at our weapon systems, our SCADA, IoT systems, I really look at how we take the 91 target level and also the 152 advanced level and look at our systems engineering teams and to take that approach towards integrating each one of these requirements in that technical baseline. So it may be a weapon system, it may be a sensor as an IoT or some other SCADA system, but for those experts that have been deploying that capability for over a number of years now, to take a look at the full stack of 152 requirements, look at their as-is technical baseline for that particular capability, and to tightly integrate each one of those activities that constitute target and advanced to make sure that they are integrating those as tightly as possible for that particular capability. Noting that as you go through a system engineering process, you look at all the requirements, we're going to make sure that we understand the stakeholders' requirements coming from the PFMO. And we want to do a very tight architecture along with the Zero Trust capabilities. And then we want to move into a good prototype in most cases to understand how this weapon system, how this IoT system may change. We want to verify and validate that implementation integration of that particular capability, whatever it is, before we start thinking about transitioning a 2B Zero Trust enabled capability within the Department of Navy. So in the implementation plan, you'll see a large section of how we're going to implement that using a systems engineering approach. I really rely on the expertise of those system engineers, those engineering teams, those program managers that are expert in that particular capability, be it a kinetic system, be it a sensory system, or other type of system that may not be traditional IoT, but sometimes referred to as operational technology, to ensure that each one of those capabilities are considered and mapped to the architecture within their particular technical baseline, and something that we can test and validate. And when we come to independent verification and validation, ensuring that our red teams are involved in that validation to make sure that that capability actually meets all the requirements that were defined by the Zero Trust Portfolio Management Office and signed out by the DoD CIO in his strategy.
That's great, Dave. So the mindset here is that we're trying to close off all the vectors of an adversarial attack. So there are ways to get into systems that are more than just IT. So we're trying to address them little at a time. So you may very well see over the next 12 months some additive things going on into the strategy which might address some of these things and start to begin to tackle some of them from a Zero Trust perspective. And it's what I would say a living document from a strategy perspective. So from that being said, Dave, I'll stay with you. And Jamie, could you talk to your thoughts on how Zero Trust could be that living document? How could we adapt to the future needs or requirements of Zero Trust? You know, the enemy is going to adapt to what we're doing. We don't 100% know it's going to stop every single vector they have, so we're going to have to continually watch red team, blue team, purple, threat, etc. So it's a moving target. So how how can Zero Trust keep up with the modifications that are going to probably be necessary so that we continue to be ahead of the adversary from the OODA loop perspective?
Yeah, so from my standpoint, it's going to be a lot of cross-pollination between these system engineering teams. So as we implement Zero Trust and we integrate those capabilities and we test those capabilities, invariably we're going to have some implementations of the capabilities and activities that constitute target and advanced level that do far better against a red team and defeating that red team and keeping the adversary from being able to compromise our mission. And what we want to do is take those good examples, expert level examples, and make those new requirements and feed those back into other system engineering teams so they can consider. And even have groups come out and take a look at maybe some of these examples that are trailblazing in the way that they've implemented Zero Trust, and to take those requirements back through the system engineering process and add those new requirements to their their technical baseline and ensure that those are testing to see if we can get those same outcomes. So if I were to have a red team to go out to 100 different programs that have implemented Zero Trust, and we've blue teamed them, they have purple teams, we validate that they met all of the requirements, definitely for target, maybe some advanced, and they see that we have a high level of success with maybe 5 or 10% of those programs, but then we may have a subset of programs that aren't doing so well based on the implementation and the design decision that they made. Feed these new requirements into their process and other future requirements that may come from the portfolio management office using this consistent systems engineering approach to improve those technical baselines, so when we go to an independent verification and validation of their capabilities, especially with the red team, we expect to see a great improvement in the way that they're able to defend that capability against an adversarial attack.
Yeah, totally agree. The integration of engineering teams across ourselves, across our partners, is going to be absolutely key, right? Like, I think we lose sight of the fact that we're all on the same side. I think the government at large and DoD and IC do not do a good job of collaborating, right? It's a cultural issue, as we've mentioned, and we need to continue to have those conversations. As we as a service provider on the IC side and on the DoD side, we're providing our solutions as gods for services to be able to use. That includes, DISA, but also services are free to be able to pick those up and use those, right? I think we lose track of the fact, that GOTS is there. We have a common requirements process to be able to do that. We have common bosses. We have common ways of being able to, bring funding and bring plans together to be able to execute against that. So I think we can do a much better job of being able to integrate that. We've worked hard. We've seen and we've innovated against some of the challenges of using GOTS in the past, right? We've, no doubt, as NSA as well as other agencies, been challenged to be able to use GOTS and productize those. We've used those and making significant progress. We only continue to make progress as we continue to get our requirements, mission drivers, and understand what the mission is and be able to, evolve based on that. Standing off my GOTS soapbox, right? There's other ways we can integrate, as well as GOTS, like setting up the standards, ways of being able to integrate amongst different applications, ways in which we support, development of policy, development of tags and federation of identity are going to be really critical, right? We need to have to continue to work together to be able to push those forward. And I think, couldn't agree more. That integration, that systems engineering combined approach can be really tough. I think there's a big cultural divide that the ZTP FMO is working really hard and having a lot of success in being able to break down that divide. But we need to continue to be able to do that. That's a big strength if you think around like an Indo-Pacom. Our partnerships are our big strength if you think around what we're defending and how we're going to be able to go out and defend that. What we're trying to move forward with, that collaborative effort is really key.
Thank you, Jamie. So next one is going to go to Chris. So arguably, DISA is the agency that engages with industry a lot, more than most on this table. I know you have a lot of experience working with industry. My question is this. In your recent interactions with industry partnerships that you have, could you talk to us about how industry is thinking about zero trust and take us inside the room when you privately talk to them about how they could help you as a DISA agency implement zero trust?
Thanks. So industry partnership is everything, right? All of the success that we've had with Thunderdome and Zero Trust for DISA has been through industry partnership, whether that's our integrator who's actually deploying to the sites currently, or it's the applications and software that we're leveraging. Just sitting here thinking about it, probably 10 of the enablers for Zero Trust are applications that come from industry that we've integrated together, that the integration team for Thunderdome has done. So we would not be anywhere without industry partnership, is what I've seen over the last years at DISA, but specifically with this program as well, right? Jamie talked a little bit about GOTS. This is a COTS solution for DISA, and I would argue largely it's going to be a COTS solution or a cloud-native solution for the departments and services and everyone. But what I've seen is COTS solutions integrated together to provide a zero trust target level or advanced level. And in those private rooms when we talk through it, right, zero trust is on everyone's mind, but this is the evolution of cybersecurity, right? This is an ongoing conversation. It's an ongoing evolution in my mind. I think that partners will continue to join us. Different applications will be needed as we move along, right? I think different solutions are going to come. And I think a part where industry can help us, or where I see a challenge in that space, is really interoperability, right? So these solutions for zero trust, they need to be interoperable. I don't believe that Thunderdome is going to, I would love it, but I don't think Thunderdome is going to be launched across all of the Department of Defense. I think there's going to be other solutions in this space, Air Force or anywhere else, and those things need to work together to provide things like conditional access. And if we can't do that as a network using industry, we're going to put ourselves at a strategic disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
If I may add on to that, right, interoperability is a massive concern, especially when we look to capabilities like software-defined perimeters or SASE solutions. They simply do not talk to each other. They do not federate. So I make this pretty clear from a Department of the Air Force standpoint. If you want to do business with us, you must be interoperable.
Justin, let's stick with you. We talk a lot about in the Pentagon this acronym called CJADC2 or JADC2. Outside the Pentagon, do you think about JADC2? And could you talk about how Zero Trust and JADC2 interrelate specifically with maybe an example in Indo-PACOM?
No, absolutely, right? Zero Trust is everything when it comes to CJADC2. So typical Air Force fashion, we love our acronym, so I'm going to try to help out as much as I can as I go through this, right? So the Joint All-Domain Command and Control is a long-term effort to connect military assets across space, air, land, sea, and cyber domains. The DoD intends for JADC2 to analyze warfighting data across all of those domains and allow decision makers to identify, execute, and monitor operations more effectively. The focus on C, or combined in CJADC2, highlights the need for C4, which is command, control, communications, and computers. And those warfighting capabilities need to be interoperable not only across the joint warfighting community, but with allies and coalition partners as well, to facilitate the global force integration required for combined operations. Primary objective of CJADC2, to connect sensors to shooters through the future battle space, relies upon advantages gained through enhanced C4 capabilities, and those will depend on the development and application of emerging technologies, including a zero trust framework. The Department of the Air Force and our contribution to CJADC2 through ABMS, the Advanced Battle Management System, will enable air and space force systems to seamlessly share data to enable faster decision making. We're baking zero trust in from the very beginning of this, and it is built around that framework. ABMS will leverage a hybrid cloud environment to expand the ability to rapidly process data ingested from an infinite number of sensors.
Okay. Hope I understand that. I do. Thank you. Okay, so I'm looking at the time, and I want to throw the last question at all of you. I just ask, and I know it's not doing it justice, but I just ask to keep your answers to maybe 2 or 3 minutes. So this is the question. I know out here, I know everywhere, the last mile, the DDIL, disconnected environment is important. So when we're talking about the Navy, NSA, Air Force, DISA, you all have different ideas about this because your missions are different. So I want to stick to where you're working. I want you guys to understand or to explain to the audience what you think is going on in the last mile and how you're addressing that or thinking about that from a zero trust perspective. Again, Chris, I'll start off with you and then I'll bring it back.
I think that disconnected environments are complicated when you start to talk about things like cloud and hybrid cloud approach, right? And phoning home to a cloud or managing an edge or a tactical edge from the cloud. So that's a consideration as we move to cloud, right? Is when you're disconnected or you're in a tactical environment and you can't get to your management suite for your application or for your zero trust tools, right? Like, well, what do you do then, right? At DISA, we've seen this problem. We're working through this problem. The technology that we're fielding will continue to operate if not connected to the cloud, although it is connected to the cloud as far as management. But it does work in a disconnected environment. It continues to work on its last settings, continues to have its conditional access policies in place, even though it's not managed by the cloud at all times in a tactical environment. So I think that that's something that's to be considered. I also think that just the regional nature, like Indo-Pacific is a perfect example. We ran into this problem when we deployed it, Pearl Harbor, Ford Island, right? It was what kind of experience, what kind of user experience are people getting when they apply zero trust? Not exactly right, not tactical, but certainly regionally a challenge. So we worked through that problem as well. So devices have to operate outside of their cloud dependency is my takeaway.
Okay. Justin, what does Air Force think?
So we're actually in the process of building a tactical edge or flyaway kit that is zero trust enabled. We're going to be deploying it out at the XCOM Roundup exercise in 2024. It's only a few months away. Largely, the kit's already built around a zero trust framework. And so our goal is to demonstrate what these zero trust requirements and capabilities can be in their effectiveness at the tactical edge. So that kit is going to be able to not necessarily need to VPN through DISA to get back to its final destination. It's going to be able to leverage whatever communication path is available to it, leveraging a lot of the lessons learned from Edge Connect and Valiant Shield. And similarly, it's going to have enough compute and store on the system itself to build any necessary applications using infrastructure as code, configuration as code, things of that nature. So automatically build applications at the edge. So if we need to remain dark, we can. But that option of lighting up communications will always be there, and we will have that infinite resiliency I talked about earlier to guarantee those comms.
And of course, from a synchronization point of view, from the ZTP FMO, we're going to share this information across all of DoD so everybody can benefit from all of that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Jamie.
Yeah, I think from NSA standpoint, ICAM specifically, zero trust for me is really zero implicit trust. So in a disconnected environment, how can you trust the identities of folks you're working with? I think we're working hard on that. It's been a topic around combat support modernization for a long time. I think there, as mentioned in the JFN keynote earlier, there's kind of 3 aspects to that. There's technology, and there's a lot of vendors here who would agree with me, I'm sure. You can do anything with technology given enough dollars and time. The other parts are policy and process, right? So understanding the policies and processes behind what does a disconnected environment look like, right? And this is, very serious eventualities that we're trying to wrestle with, right? Like what happened, especially in the location we're at right now. What would happen in a disconnected environment, in a crisis or conflict scenario, right? In order to be able to supply information that's going to be extremely necessary in that scenario, but do that in a way that they're, in a zero trust framework where there's zero implicit trust, understanding your identities and being able to process data that's tagged in a compliant manner is a big challenge that we're working on. As I mentioned, we do, from a technology standpoint, have a number of solutions that are able to cache identities and data and tagging, and as well as working with distributed, edge type technologies like our PDP, which can be fully, deployed on application, which is meant to be as performant and skinny as possible, in order to hit that sweet spot where we're taking that decision advantage. We're providing data, but we're doing it in a way that's secure and as denying our adversary the opportunity to take advantage of the information we know.
Thanks, Jamie.
So from my standpoint, we're looking at what I had proposed maybe a year ago. It's a naval community cloud where we already have tactical units that will get underway, disembark, go into the field to do their operations. And much to Justin's point, to have a flyaway kit that would allow embarkable Marines to get on a large deck amphib, disembark, and be able to have all the capabilities that they have today, and have connectivity through BUOS and other types of satellite communications back to other forces as needed. But in this naval community cloud approach, it really looks at the enterprise IT, your Microsoft Azure flying speed implementations for Navy, your Office 365 implementation. This also hosted on Microsoft Azure as primarily a COA 2 option to meet Zero Trust as quickly as we can, and then look at different options for on-premise tactical cloud, if you will, that will be able to be a part of the normal community cloud when they're connected peer side, either through 5G or through an umbilical connection at 10 gig or faster. And what this will allow our ships to do is when they do get underway, they operate no longer in a hybrid configuration, but in a completely private configuration. And they have everything they need to perform their mission on board ship. And this is scaled to need for our embarkable Marines. So when they disembark to do their mission, they're able to go forth and do that mission with all the capability that they would need to be able to complete that successfully. So this community cloud approach really focuses on the tactical edge. How do we allow a particular unit, a large deck amphib, a CG, DDG, or carrier to get underway, do their mission as a battle group, and then also return to the community cloud when they come back into port and become that hybrid cloud once again from their private cloud substantiation. But the other thing I brought up with our tech advisory board, when we start thinking about our field offices and some of our office buildings, normal business IT, there's always that possibility that they could be disconnected. With SD-WAN, SASE type of capabilities, that's less likely. But as we saw in Puerto Rico, if there's a natural disaster, hurricane, something that could knock out a particular region, a particular facility could still operate independently in this hybrid cloud approach as a private cloud, have everything they need until they can restore their wide access network connectivity.
Thanks, Dave. That was great. Okay, so according to my cell phone, we have 20 minutes approximately to take questions. I wanted to prioritize the questions from the audience more than my questions. If we run out of questions from the audience, then we'll go back to my little list. But I suspect that there will be plenty of questions. So if folks answered the question, it's right over here. Okay,
yes,
so...
Sir, I can read it here
Sure.
from the back. Many of the Zero Trust capabilities carry with them digital transformation as a prerequisite capability to implement and operate new stack cloud, containerized and federated workloads. Cleared new stack talent, especially locally, is in short supply. Should a workforce strategy to attract and retain new stack talent be included with the Zero Trust capability pillars?
I think it actually is. So in our cultural adoption, we do have 1.4 and 1.5 is to identify a cadre of folks to be trained up to train the soldiers and sailors, Marines, and airmen that were going to be expected to take cybersecurity positions. Then I believe in 1.5 is to have that training curriculum developed. We have been partnering with Defense Acquisition University. They've started a number of courses to start training our professionals today, and we also want to drive that down to our C schools and A schools. So if you look in the DON's implementation plan, there is a section on ensuring that our new Marines and sailors coming in to the force are getting trained. And we have a chief workforce officer in the Department of Navy CIO's office that's focusing on that.
Chris, anything to say? No, I don't want to throw it on you, but if yeah.
No, so when I think about it, right, training is very important, and we continuously train and evolve. But one thing that we found is, success in is recruiting talent nationwide at a minimum, right? So we don't limit ourselves to the NCR, right? There's a lot of talent in the NCR, but there's also talent in Oklahoma and Hawaii, right? So we have to recruit and then train a nationwide strategy. We've seen a lot of success of that for DISA, for federal employees. We've also seen that with our integrator. Coming here to PAC, met some employees for my integrator here that they locally attracted talent and they locally support what we have here. So sure, we need to train people. We also need to open the aperture as far as where we recruit from, in my mind.
Okay, next question.
How do we make it as easy as possible for users to mark and label data correctly? What is the status of the DoD's data policy? Are the architecture and data standards aligned?
So, okay, all right. So from a personal perspective, if we're asking the user to tag their own data, we've already failed. Data is not going to be tagged correctly. It's going to be mislabeled. The retainment's not going to be correct. It needs to be automated. And so we've got our own Department of the Air Force CDAO that's really leading our data efforts, building up that data fabric, getting through data tagging strategy, all of these things in an automated fashion to really eliminate those hurdles I just mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, I think user tagging is certainly part of it, and I totally agree. Relying on users is not gonna happen, right? Like I could point to basically everybody across my organization who does not conform with policy probably multiple times on a daily basis, right? What we talk about for especially our network, and we think around how the future of warfighting is really machine tagging is hard enough, right? Like understanding the sensors, platforms, analytic products that are processing and making information available. That's enough of a challenge, right? I think taking an approach of users as person entities and non-person entities, thinking around entities and how to credential those to be able to apply data, right? Like that's something we've worked on a lot and had a lot of success and are willing to share our products, some of which are available as open source products anyway. But not just the products, but share how we've done that, right? Like we understand from the IC side and NSA side, not everybody is going to want to do things exactly the way we've done that, right? But the interoperability has been mentioned, I think, multiple times by everybody here, and probably in every session that I've been lucky enough to witness. Presenting the standards of how we do that. So from a DoD perspective, I do think there is work that needs to be done. I think there should be standards. At the IC, we have standards. You can use EDH for marking data. If that doesn't work, my office has actually worked with Air Force, DARPA, Space Force, a bunch of other services to come up with standards that work for their use cases using IC standards as a basis, but extending those to include, for example, SAT markings, or to extend to GeoInt or other types of data that are necessary in order to be able to execute missions like JFN or support other capabilities. So there's work that needs to be done there. I think at an enterprise level, whether it comes from CDAO or CIO or ZTPFMO or whoever. I'm not in charge of organization at DoD or how best to do that. I can say from our perspective, it is CIO, ATO mandated, right? Like in order to have a system that's a SIGINT system, you need to be tagging your data. Otherwise, it's not a SIGINT system, right? Like that's enforced, right? It takes leadership support and mandates to be able to do that. But I mentioned earlier, like finding the sweet spot between establishing standards but making sure they're extensible. I think one of the approaches that we've learned as we've grown through the journey from the IC of over the past decade of applying information security marking to things that are implementable is providing specifications that say here's how it should be, not super high level vocabulary, although that's important as well, but providing a specification that says as long as you mark your data in this type of way, as long as it conforms to the policy that we all agree on, right? We all read 13526 every year and say that we understand the classification procedures before, just to put it out, completely ignoring them when we execute a mission, right? But the mission systems, the things that are doing the high speed, high scope, high volume processing and dissemination of information need to be able to do that in a consistent, interoperable manner. Whether you implement that through native ICAM languages like Rego or Zacamol or things, or you come up with your own JSON or other more performant way to do that, right? Operating within that specification is something which we've had success with, and I think that I would encourage DoD and I do encourage DoD on a daily basis in order to be able to adopt that and move forward. That is not an easy conversation, right? There's a lot of people in the room. It goes back to my point. Remember, we're all on the same side. I think starting with having an established standard, leadership-supported way to mandate that through process and policy with the technology that can support it is the way to move forward. I'll continue to work personally with CDAO and anybody else who'll listen. I encourage everybody else to do the same.
So for the point Jamie makes on enforcement, I think is a great point, right? And I would broaden it past data, right? And I know, Mr. Resnick, your team is working through overlays and controls and things that we need to look at enforcing those things, right? But application owners are not going to do this on their own, right? We're going to require enforcement beyond data to make applications, the network, the environments become compliant. So that's a great point about enforcement on data and other pillars.
Yeah, so one thing I would suggest is having a partnership between your software developers, your cybersecurity professionals, and also your database administrators, those who design your data sets, to work together to incorporate these standards and specifications that are coming out and automate that tagging and labeling of that data based on the pedigree of that person that's producing that data. Now, it may be a real human person producing that data on a government computer at a certain facility. There's a lot of derivative tags that you can gain from where that data is originated, especially with IoT, with different sensors that are out there, the sensor's name, the location, the type of data that sensor is collecting. Is it temperature? Is it other types of wind speed, weather type of data? Is it telemetry data from an aircraft that's being tested by the Air Force? What information that's coming in, and as it's being produced, the software is able to tag it using different subroutines, and then when it's stored in the database, that stored database, be it not only SQL or a traditional SQL type of databases, will actually ingest those tags, so we have a consistent level of tags done by software. We can independently validate it with users, cybersecurity professionals, to audit to make sure that the software is operating as intended. And this gets away from that human error, or at a time frame where maybe a human is very busy and they mistag something. The software will help us and use technology really to help us humans to ensure that our architecture and the standards that we have applied as far as data tagging and labeling are actually integrated into that data. So later on, if we want to write an ABAC policy for ICAM, I can be very fine-tuned and who is able to see that data coming back to them based on their identity and a consistent tagging and labeling, not only within the Department of the Navy, but across our mission partners to ensure we have that consistent labeling, and to a greater extent, our international partners. Thank you.
Okay. We're not admiring the problem that's being worked in fiscal 24. We have a pilot that's going to be going on with CDAO. We recognize that this is a problem. There are implications with the ICAM system, so it's not so easy. We could talk all day about this, but I think we got really great wave tops on this. Next question.
Thank you. The next question. How do Zero Trust informed architectures support information sharing with coalition partners across different security levels?
Justin.
All right. So when all of these pieces come together, right, the framework comes together between data tagging, between ICAM, between data access control, all of these different parts. That's really what that is the end state, is where a coalition user, regardless of where they are, they're going to be able to access the data that they are explicitly authorized to access anywhere, anytime, right? That is the principle of Zero Trust, is enabling that access. So across different security levels, I do see a future maybe in several years where we're talking about collapsing many of these security levels because we've moved those protection perimeters to the data edge. And so separating or segmenting out our classification levels into different domains goes back to that legacy defense in depth strategy that's been proven ineffective, right? So simplifying where that data is located, how that data is accessed, and then doing that continuous authentication and authorization.
Yeah, and from that standpoint, from the Department of the Navy, we look at the outcome. So a user is only able to see the things that they're authorized to use. So I may have a vast network within this room, but if I were to authorize a particular mission partner to a set of data, they would only be able to see the data pathway to that data, and that particular identity provider would be integrated with their particular identity provider to be able to accept that particular token for access into that particular information domain. And within that information domain, the Department of Navy has in our implementation plan an access control engineering group. And we will look at how we implement Zero Trust within that information domain to allow a certain mission partner to have access to maybe red-colored data, blue-colored data, yellow-colored data, different types of colored data based on their country of origin, who they are, and based on that ABAC policy that's applied to that particular information domain. And we may have an infinite number of information domains that are governed by a particular identity partner, but the same is true for that particular person's country of origin. They will only be able to see that identity provider to be able to access that particular governance of data that's in there. So it makes it very granular and very easy to control. And then under a Zero Trust principle that's part of Target is user and entity behavioral analytics. So if a particular person who is authorized access to this particular information, if it seems odd or something that's not what we consider normal usage of the data, we could take a countermeasure and log that person out, or use other types of methods to ensure that that person is exactly who they say they are, and the authentication is 100%. The other benefit of doing this type of approach is that we're able to preserve resources, compute, memory, and storage for only those people who are actually authorized to the use of that data and that information system. So we can actually have a reduced set of compute, memory, and storage located and allocated for that particular information domain.
Yeah, I think like that was a fantastic answer. I mean, just to double down on the mission or outcome focus for that, right? Like we're with our coalition, we should be attacking the same mission or missions, right? And taking a Zero Trust approach and a data and an ICAM approach that's focused on a mission allows you to ensure that you're meeting the same requirements as we talked about, and also like eases management as well, right? Because you're abstracting away like, what is the HR structure? For example, like a supervisor-led, who's the supervisor of somebody in our coalition partner? Like, we can barely sometimes figure out who supervisors are in our own agencies. So taking a mission approach of like, this person, this system, this application is working on this mission. That transcends, right, coalition boundaries, agency boundaries, HR boundaries, everything else. So being able to do that eases the implementation. I think it makes it more secure, but ultimately focuses on like what is the mission we're trying to achieve, and lets everything else kind of like follow behind that.
Thanks, Jamie. Next question.
Is there a role for acquisition offices in encouraging system integrators to move towards applying zero trust principles and technologies to monolithic or legacy systems?
So, Chris, that sounds like a DISA thing.
This comes back to enforcement and incentivizing the right behavior, right, is what it comes down to. So sure, acquisition offices can do that and are doing that. I think the CISO community has a role to play here as far as enforcement. As a program manager, a portfolio manager, what I think about is, what are the requirements that I'm trying to develop towards? And if these zero trust principles are not requirements, I'm not going to put it in the solution, right? So we as a community need to come together and encourage and incentivize the right behavior here from acquisition officers and the CISO community, in my mind.
So I'll pile on. So our Zero Trust FMO and part of the DAF, we're working across all of our PEOs, especially AFSC, which is our lead acquirer for all things IoT SCADA. And a lot of things in that realm are legacy systems that are not able to take agents, or they're not right. You don't want to necessarily put an agent on something that's going to burn a building down. So. Baking zero trust requirements into these integrator contracts has been a huge priority for us, baking it into everything that we do. What we do across enterprise IT is almost the easy button, right? Our nipper, sipper, traditional IT systems, that's where we can come in from the enterprise and really help out as much as possible. But for these other systems, baking these requirements into all of these different integrator contracts and ensuring that we understand what makes sense from a zero trust perspective on these legacy systems. How far can we take it? Not all 152 might be necessarily applicable to some of these systems. There might be extra, there might be less. And so really working with our PEOs.
Within the Air Force, are you working with the language that needs to go into the contracts?
Yes.
Excellent. Dave?
So from my standpoint, really from the Department of Navy, really like working with the system integrators. There's a ton of different COTS products and vendors out there, especially with the advent of zero trust being so prevalent within the industry that we really don't know initially when we talk to a vendor how they map to the target and advanced level zero trust capabilities. So being able to work with a vendor or an integrator that has already looked at these different products and being able to map those particular vendors' capabilities to different portions of the target and advanced level puzzle piece that will form that zero trust solution really helps out our programs. So when a particular system engineer is coming to a conference such as this, they're talking to a particular vendor and sees that that vendor can handle zero trust in certain way, but they may not be able to do the full capability that will constitute target level zero trust. A system integrator can help our system engineers look across the gambit of various different vendors to look at a solution that better fits that capability need that we need to field, and help with the system engineering process to field a capability that not only has the best of breed vendor for that particular capability and that technical baseline, but also at the lowest cost. for that particular implementation. So partnering with system integrators, in my mind, is a great approach for acquisition offices to take, and it may help reduce the amount of work a particular program manager or system engineer needs to do to be able to look across the board of all the different capability gaps that they have and selecting which vendor is going to be best for this particular capability gap. So there's a lot of benefit in the acquisition offices to use system integrators. I think it will help us get to target level Zero Trust faster and definitely help meet the, by the end of 2027, target level Zero Trust requirement.
Great. I want to thank everybody for attending. It's been a great 75 minutes. Hopefully the questions were varied. We heard a lot of great answers here. I want to thank the panel members. Great representation here, and I really appreciate it. I want to leave everybody with the thought that we have the gas pedal to the metal. We're moving fast in the portfolio office, and that's driving everybody over here to move just as fast. So we can't do it fast enough, but we're doing it carefully and smartly. And I really appreciate everybody's contribution in the components in the DoD, NSA, DISA, et cetera. And if anybody has any extra questions, feel free to contact them directly. And I'm sure they're happy to continue the answers. Thank you so much.
Yeah.